Hey, welcome back once again, Knicks fans. This is Civil Analytics for Knicks fans. Just wanted to review the Knicks Hornets game from the previous night. Sorry, I'm releasing this a little late. It takes time to kind of get the stats together and then put the presentation together. So I wasn't able to do it last night, but bringing it to you guys tonight. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to see if I can create a website to kind of like put these stats out there. And I think my goal next year is to compile these stats for each game the Knicks play. And the reason why I do this again, especially with the defensive stats, is because of the way they assigned um, who contests the field goal. It doesn't always capture who's at fault for like a defensive breakdown. And so, because of the way the NBA does it, it just basically whoever challenges the shot, right? That's the person who earns the stat of like from the opponent. However, when you do that, it doesn't always tell you exactly what happened, how the defense, who basically allowed the defense to get broken down, and to allow that point from being scored. Like I said, the example I was used of if you have a man like one of the Knicks players, let's say Evan Fournier, he does this a lot where his man just runs right by him. He doesn't even really make an honest effort to stop it. And Mitchell Robinson goes to help and block the shot, and Mitchell Robinson is unsuccessful, and the man scores. A lot of times that basically goes as Mitchell Robinson did contest the shot, and the made field goal goes against Mitchell Robinson, right? And so that means, like, for example, Mitchell Robinson could end up having a higher opponent field goal percentage than he really should have, like, as because if Evan Fournier was able to stay with his man, and let's say the man still scored in Evan Fournier while he was in the lane with his man, then then that goes against Evan Fournier, not against Mitchell Robinson, right? So it's almost like Mitchell Robinson, his defensive stats gets penalized by stepping up and helping out a teammate who just didn't make the effort. So that's one of the reasons I do it. The reason why I do it also is because now all because if it because that goes against Mitchell Robinson, it doesn't really capture what happened, right? Who's really at fault for that possession, for that score, for that basket that was scored. Yes, Mitchell Robinson took responsibility to help. However, you can't forget Evan Fournier basically allowed his man to just go to the lane, and that causes a lot of issues, right? And so one thing I noticed with basketball, especially with the NBA stats, is just um, it's just very difficult to figure out to quantify basically the impact, uh, the scoring impact that Evan Fournier has, the impact that he has on the defense, on our defense, right? It's possession to possession, right? So if he lets his man go by, right, and the NBA staff so basically assigns that shot attempt and that field goal made to Mitchell Robinson, then how do we know and how do we measure Evan Fournier's impact on the defense on that possession? I guess there's really no way to. I know there's stats that basically that looks at the number of drives that's allowed that have like basically that people allow to the basket, and something I need to look further into to see if that may help. But I'm just trying to explain the reason why I do it. I feel like the way I do it, it kind of captures as a whole, it captures more of defensive effort for everyone on a team by possession, and so that's why I do it the way I do. And hopefully, I'm thinking next year I'm just gonna try to see if I can release this on a website. So I think that's going to be my next step, trying to put this on, have civil analytics website for Knicks fans, and actually post some of these stats on there so people can look through it whenever they get ready instead of just looking at it on video. Because honestly, to tell you the truth, yeah, it's better to actually have it in a place where it's stationary, where people can look at it, even like manipulate it, even test it to see if it makes sense, right? And so, but let's get started talking about this game. And so the Knicks lost against the Hornets. And pretty much the reason why they lost this game against the Hornets was because the defensive effort really just wasn't there. It seemed like the Hornets was just way faster. It seemed like the Knicks weren't even ready to play this game. So it wasn't like it was a back to back. I think they had at least 1 day rest before this game happened, before the previous game. So I'm just not even sure, given the fact that Coach Tibbs, he's trying to win as much games as possible, right? They're here to win as much games as possible. He's not about tanking, but yeah, the team looked like they were tanking yesterday. They weren't even the defensive effort just wasn't there, and this is where I kind of get into speculation. So a lot of this is stats mixed with like obviously dialogue about what's happening during the game. So there is some speculation that goes into that. So everything I'm saying is not fact and is not backed up by data and numbers. However, uh, it's really interesting after the previous game what happened um, with Julius Randle, how he walked off the court, and the rumors that came out about him basically wanting to be traded from the team, or basically saying he's done with the Knicks. It's really interesting that obviously it's obvious the team wanted to uh, is trying to recover, right? And so they want to maintain Julius Randle's image as a good team player, because it's not in the Knicks' best interest to basically to allow it to get out there that Julius Randle is just a crappy teammate, right? And so, but given all that situation, obviously they wanted to make sure recover his image, or kind of like reclaim his image or whatever. And so, but you can see the impact that it has on the team when they came out today. When they came out yesterday in this game, it just felt like they weren't even ready. Because if you tell that this is the problem with having someone like Julius Randle when he's going through the stuff he's going through, and when he's not held accountable, it's just like then is why what's the point of playing? Julius Randle hasn't played defense the whole year, right? And it's very clear a lot of these games, like he just doesn't even attempt to make an effort sometimes. A lot of times his man will just go right by him. You can just the thing that's really bad with Julius Randle, you can just tell everything he's doing. You can tell his intentions based on his body language. He's such an emotional person, and he's such not just emotional, but he's a very I'm gonna lost words. Somebody who kind of like you can just tell everything about them by their body language, and their motion. They're just kind of their body, I guess, is dramatic, right? You can just tell what's going on with them just based on their body language. And he's that kind of person. And he's that, and so when he steps on the court and you just see the way he plays on defense, he's not trying, and he's purposely putting in like a really poor effort. And I think when you're doing stuff like that, when you're allowing a player like that to play, and then you're playing that player, you're playing him 35 minutes, almost 35 minutes, as if, having him on the court is going to help this team win, right? It's just, it's pretty laughable, right? And even if you think about it, really nobody on this team should be playing more than really over like 32 minutes, to tell you the truth, to get during this time of season. It's pointless. The chances of them making the playoffs is almost impossible, right? And given our schedule, and given Atlanta's schedule, and given the Hornets schedule, it was almost impossible. It's basically impossible for us to make the playoffs. And then, even if you wanted to make the playoffs, you don't do it by basically playing Julius Randle 35 minutes after the previous effort he gave. He played a little better offensively today. He didn't shoot too poorly. He was 44% from the field. But yet again, he's a power forward, and so if you guys think that's great, 44% from the field is great for a power forward. Hey, it's on you. But I think obviously part of it, he shot 10 3-pointers and made 4, so he shot 40% from the 3-point line, which is I guess is actually pretty good in the NBA. However, the problem wasn't offense; it was defense, and so I think that had an impact on the team's defensive effort and the team's morale, right? And so that's just my take on what I think happened this game. They just weren't. It feel like they weren't ready. They weren't really playing hard on the defensive end. And it's why would you play hard when you have, for example, somebody like Julius Randle playing defense the way he plays? Same thing, Evan Fournier playing the defense the way he plays. The crazy thing when I compile these defensive stats, you can just tell the Hornets was going. They were going Julius Randle, Fournier, and Burks Hutton, right? But mostly Julius Randle and Evan Fournier, because they knew both of them give the least effort on the defensive end. Evan Fournier before sometimes would give you some effort, especially like when he's kind of like into the game. But this game, he just gave a horrendous effort on the defensive end, although he was engaged in the offensive end. But he was just terrible on defense. He's already bad one-on-one, but occasionally he tries to play the passing lanes. And sometimes, especially when he tries to double team, he's very aggressive doing that, trying to get steals. However, it's just he was just horrible this game, and so was Julius, and the effort just wasn't there. So it's almost like, what's the point of playing defense when you have these two guys out there playing defense the way they're playing, not even really giving an effort? Like, why should the other guys even really care that much? And so honestly, if RJ Barrett is basically, I have a feeling he's taking control of this team. In my opinion, um, I just think in my opinion, if he has a say in his, yeah, I think his team need to try to advocate the team moving Julius Randle. I think Julius Randle is already tapped out. I do think they're going to try to trade him, but the problem is because he's such a problem. Like who's really going to take him? Who's going to want to take this guy who's a problem? It's almost like he's backed the Knicks into a corner where there's going to be a situation now. People are talking about the only way to get rid of Julius is by attaching a valuable asset like a first round pick. And it might make a little sense because if you think about it, his performance this year, right, was so bad, right? But you look at the big man that the Kings took over, basically took when they traded Halliburton. I can't remember the Sabonis. I mean, Sabonis was way more efficient, right? You look at the numbers, honestly. If you look at the numbers alone, efficiency, production, you would probably take Sabonis over Julius. You would not even think about taking. It would be laughable to even take Julius over Sabonis, right? I know a lot of us were thinking like, wow, maybe it was just Julius's attitude that killed the whole thing, but not really. If you look at Sabonis, he's way more efficient. I'm not sure how many points he scored for the Pacers, but I'm pretty sure he was close to 20, probably close to 10 rebounds. So the productions are similar, but on a much higher efficiency. And of course, he's a better teammate, and so that's pretty much why I'm pretty sure that's why the Kings took Sabonis over Julius. He was just a much better player this year. Julius got his money last year, came in out of shape this year, and put up really poor performance on the defensive end. That's really the reason why the fans got pissed. People make it seem like it's because he wasn't shooting very well. No, it's because everyone notices he doesn't get back on defense when he misses layups or when he turns over the ball. Right? That's the reason why. And then to make matters worse, everyone knows the coach doesn't hold him accountable, and so it just kind of cranks up the fever that everyone has for this guy, especially a lot of the Knicks fans. And so it's not something that it wasn't like it wasn't his doing, and it's just the fans are fickle and they turned on him. No, it wasn't fickle fans that turned on Julius. It's Julius basically his performance, his lack of effort, basically had the fans. He forced the fans' hands because he's not making an effort. So what are we supposed to cheer? Like the fans are supposed to cheer when you just don't even make an effort? Look at the way he's been playing on defense. And so I think that's what happened this game. It's just, the team, the front office, look, know what they have to do. We know what they're doing, but this is where the coach steps in. Do you really need to play him? You say you're trying to win ball games, and you're supposed to be inspiring confidence in your team. Are you telling me this is what you want to do? And that's the other. So Tom Thibodeau, I felt like his approach to training kids in the off season, training players in the off season, is good, and I think I like it, right? And if you get rid of all the vets, and I think it will be a good thing, but honestly, it's no. I was thinking possibly it might be a good thing. That's one thing I like about him. But every time I see these situations, and it's not because the Knicks lost this game, because they can't win every game, right? I mean, the Hornets are a good team, but the problem is it's just like his stubbornness rears his ugly head. The lack of leadership he has rears his. Thibodeau, honestly, and this sounds harsh coming from a guy I don't know him very well. I'm not in this organization, but from what I see as a coach, anyone can say whatever they want, but he's not a good leader. He's not a good leader. He's a very poor leader. Thibodeau's a very poor leader, and you can just tell he doesn't inspire. You need to be able to inspire confidence in your players, especially your young players, and he just doesn't do that. He takes confidence away from them. They make a mistake, he yanks them. He yanked this kid McBride because he made a mistake like in the first 3-4 minutes of a Toronto game. After this kid played pretty well against the Hornets in a few games prior to that, he's been playing. He played this kid because of injuries, and then in the Toronto game, he yanks this kid, and nobody has seen this kid on the floor for any meaningful. Didn't see this kid on the floor for any meaningful minutes for like a couple of months, 2 months probably. It's like that's not what you do with young players. That's not how you do things. You know the way he treated Kemba Walker. That's not how you treat veterans, right? He doesn't talk. You can tell he doesn't talk to Obi. That's not the way you treat your players. You know what's fun? You know this is how I know exactly. That's what he does, and that's why he has really crappy relationships with like most of the team members. If you guys noticed recently, there's a new thing now. When they come in for a timeout or into a huddle, he makes an effort now to kind of slap dap everybody up. Thibodeau never used to do that. He wasn't doing that last year. He wasn't doing that earlier this year. It's something new that the front office probably implemented. They have whoever human resource that they have that works on chemistry and and morale and stuff like that. They've told them like, hey, look, the team have really bad morale. You obviously don't treat them very well in the game, especially the young players. All you do is bark at them, or you just shove them in the bench and bury them. So maybe when they come in off timeouts, maybe you should make a point of dapping everybody up, giving them fives and stuff like that. I mean, and so I've noticed that they did that recently, but they weren't really doing that before. And so that's just something new he was doing. He started doing recently, and so that's just another reason why I know he's just not a very good leader, and somebody had to tell him to make sure he was doing that. But I mean that's all just for show. That's a little bit. That's one small step, to make, and that's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's a good thing that he's doing that now, but it's a lot more than that, right? It's about talking to these players. It's about like letting them know what's going on. You can't just bench someone or play Obi Toppin like 10 minutes a game this year without letting him know like what the issue is or what he needs to do to improve. Like I'm not in these. I'm not in their. I'm not in obviously in their practices, so I don't know if he tells his stuff to tells Obi Toppin. But I could pretty much speculate that no, he doesn't tell Obi. He doesn't. If he doesn't think you're worthy or worth it, Thibodeau doesn't talk to you. He doesn't want to tell you anything. And a lot of times you can tell when he's on the sideline when he's got issues and he might be in the wrong. He does hold his fold his hands a lot very tightly. But you can just tell when he's struggling and he's not confident. That's when he does that. He does that quite often when he folds his hands on the sidelines. That usually means he's not confident. He folds it and he's like hugging himself like really tight. But that's neither here nor there. But it's just I just feel like Thibodeau is just a really poor leader, and it's just this line is not even about the lineup, but look at the minutes. So we had one, two, three, four, five, six guys. There's six guys that played 20 minutes or over, around 20 minutes or over. So he played a 6-man rotation. I mean, we don't have a lot of guys, obviously, on the bench anyway. There's only what do we have, like 9 players here? Yeah, I guess we have 9 players Arcidiacono and Taj was there, but we didn't play either one of them. I think front office told him he can't play Taj anymore, it looks like, and that they need to play Jericho. But Jericho only got like 11 minutes. Jericho was terrible yesterday, but you got to play him. I'm sorry, you got to play him. Obi Toppin was actually good yesterday, but he didn't. He played Obi 12 minutes, so it didn't make any sense whatsoever. I mean, like Obi Toppin, I keep saying it. He's just way more efficient than Julius is right now. He's just more efficient to just play the damn kid, play him. You got to give him at least 20 minutes. It doesn't kill anyone if you play him 20 minutes a game. And so I just don't understand why he doesn't play him. But the whole point is he only plays 6 people to about 20 minutes or over. Everyone else is basically 12 minutes and under, these 3 guys, right? And these 3 guys, they need the minutes. This is the end of the season. But in contrast, let's look at the Hornets, right? The Hornets has something to play for, right? And so the Hornets, because they have something to play for, you would think they have a very tight rotation and don't play a lot of people. Let's see how many people that got about 20 minutes or more on the Hornets. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it was 8, and not it wasn't that crazy, that much better. The Hornets are actually looks like they're short a few people, so they don't have like a lot of people on the bench either. Anyway, so one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8. So it was six more than it was two more than the Knicks. And so I just don't understand it. You can play at least 8 people around 20 minutes a game. You know, and that's like this is stingy. This is stingy. Only 8 people playing 20 minutes or more. It's not that it's kind of stingy, right? But if you look at it though, the distribution for their team was even better though. If you think about it, at least like they didn't have anyone really playing over 34 minutes. Everyone was like under 34 minutes, right? And if you're going to play a fast-paced game and you want your players to play on both sides of the ball, you can't play them 38 minutes. I don't know what this guy is thinking. And that's the reason why RJ Barrett, his defense has like dropped off drastically the last like month or so, because he's been asserting himself on the offensive end. He wants to be the man now, right? And it's hard. How can you play 38 minutes just running up and down, like you're running up and down, and you're probably one of the primary playmakers, and then you have to play defense too? You can't play him 38 minutes doing that. You got to. It's like RJ Barrett. If you want him to give you a good defensive effort on both sides, you got to play the kid 32, 33 minutes max. That's just what you got to do. And that would help. Number one, it would help his efficiency. It would help his free throw shooting, right? And it'll help his defense as well. And so that's the other thing, the other beef I have with the coach. This just doesn't make any sense. This time of the year, and you have one, two, three, 4 people that played over 35 minutes, like it's a playoff game. What are you trying to win here? So it's just unbelievable. And so honestly, I was the last couple of days because the whole thing with Julius. Now that I think he's gonna get traded, and so I was thinking like, what, this kind of, especially if they get rid of a couple of other veterans, it forces Tibbs' hands, and he plays like the young kids and gives them the time that they need. Who knows? Who knows if that's really gonna happen? Because to tell you the truth, I remember Raw was saying in his latest video that Barnes would be a good target, right, if they trade Julius. And I got to thinking, like, given how this coach is, he'll bring in Barnes and still play him over Obi. And Barnes is not even a very good player. He's not like a player who's going to move the needle for you and help you win. But this coach will play him. He'll definitely play him over Obi, I'll tell you that much. And so I've come to the realization after watching this game that there's no salvage in Tom Thibodeau. There's just not. It's not the kind of team for it. This is not the team for Tom Thibodeau. It's just too young. The team is way too young for him, and he's not going to change. And honestly, even Tom Thibodeau should not even be coaching an old team either. Everybody was like, "Oh, the Lakers would be perfect for him." He will get everyone on the Lakers will be injured. Nobody will be available to play. Because you see what he does. He'll play LeBron 42 minutes a game, play Anthony Davis 38 minutes a game. He'll play those guys 40 minutes consecutively until they go down. That's what Tom Thibodeau will do. So he actually needs more of a team that's in their prime, like a team where a bunch of players they're veterans, they're in their prime, maybe 27, 28 years old. Yeah, you can get away with playing that. Thibodeau can coach a team like that, but not the Lakers. That's that geriatric team. Definitely not young team like the Knicks. So it's just time. There's no salvage in this guy, unfortunately, and because it's towards the end of the season, and this is what he's doing, and he thinks he's gonna win ball games. He thinks he's got the cheat code with Julius Randle, right? The reason why he plays Julius Randle all the time, because Julius Randle, if you just look at the P.I.E. alone, it's high. The dude's like, his and the reason why it's high is because of the production. It's because this is normally low for Julius Randle. Julius Randle normally averages like 10 rebounds a game, right? He's averaging 20, 10, and about 5 assists. This dude, like, he stuffs the stat sheets, right? And so that's what causes him to have a high P.I.E. ratio. But it's not that high because it also factors in efficiency. So it's not even as high as it should be because it does factor in efficiency a little bit. But the what it doesn't factor is like, how much more efficient is he than his matchups. So that's the only thing with the P.I.E. that it doesn't include. It doesn't include enough defensive stats, and so so that's why the coach plays him, right. And then also at the power forward position, there's never, there's not a lot of, like high scoring power forwards in this league. There's not a lot of them. So Julius is one of the few. And so the coach thinks that because he's going to always win his matchups by outscoring the other power forward, and then the rebounds, he gets really good rebounds and that helps the team wins. And he also gets assists, which is supposed to help facilitate the offense. He thinks he's got the cheat code, but he doesn't because Julius Randle's efficiency is just way too low for it to matter. It's way too low for the production to move the needle, and the coach is like, he doesn't get it. Just like the same way Alec Burks, he thinks Alec Burks moves the needle, but Alec Burks, the combination of his efficiency being so low and his defense being so bad, both of these guys are negatives on the court. Like in terms of efficiency, they shoot worse. Basically, the opponent constantly shoots better than these two guys all the time. They're not the only two on the team where this is the situation. But the coach thinks he's got this cheat code, but it's just he's never more efficient than the opponents that he faced up against. Look at this game. Minus 12.5%. He was 12%, almost 12.5% less efficient than his matchups were, right? That's crazy. And then on top of that, the opponent scored 23 points and he scored 21 points. So he even lost his matchup. And so there's a lot of times where it does that. Because you got to also remember, a lot of times I'm wondering if Thibodeau is just thinking about the matchup in terms of the other power forwards, right? But the problem is the game is not played that way, right? Because a lot of times, because the coach likes to switch a lot. And so Julius Randle quite often ends up switching. You have to switch. You're not always going to be the man, you're not always going to be playing defense against the man you're supposed to be playing defense against. And so switches happen. And so you end up guarding an opposing player. And so because his defense is not there, the effort is so poor, I would say more than half the time he does win the matchup on the scoring end, but the efficiency is too low. But you get these other nights where he lets everyone score, right? So like tonight, 23 points. But you would figure he was probably guarding P.J. Washington most of the night, right? And P.J. Washington, I don't think P.J. Washington had that many points. But it wasn't because of P.J. Washington alone. There were switches. A lot of time he got matched up against Miles Bridges. P.J. Washington was 5 of 8, and this is one of the reasons why P.J. Washington was so efficient too, because it's like you have Julius guarding him, and I saw a couple of times Julius Randle, like 2 times he was matched up against Cody Martin, and Cody Martin 2 times took him to the rack, took him to the hole. And just that's the problem, and that's the issue with this coach. He's a pretty smart guy. He must know, right? He must know that that Julius Randle he's not the cheat code. So you can't play him 30. You can't be playing him 40 minutes a game because you think he's the cheat code. But I have a feeling he thinks he's the cheat code. And and Tom Thibodeau is a coach that I think that understands analytics. At least I've always thought that, but I'm just trying to understand why he thinks Julius Randle is the cheat code to winning ball games. He's not. He's not even close because the efficiency is so low. Last year I did the correlation where I basically took his net rating, compared it to the team's net rating, and the correlation was pretty tight. It was like 0.73, which is really high. That's very high for an NBA team. And it should not be that high, because that means you're very dependent. You're going to be very dependent on this one player. So your team's performance last year was very dependent on this player, and so that was an issue. I've always felt that was an issue because that's like an over dependence on him. And if he doesn't show up, if he decides he's not going to show up like he did this year, that means your team is going to be bad, because the team was built around Julius. And everything, the coach was basically force feeding him. he was force feeding him, getting all, everything was ran through Julius even this year, and so that's why the team was so bad because Julius was bad, right? And so this year I did the same thing. I tested his net rating versus the team's net rating, and the correlation was gone. There was no correlation between his performance this year and the team's performance. And so, like there's a few things I can speculate about that. Uh, Number one, it could mean his performance was like inconsistent and erratic. That was one thing. I think that's clearly what it meant. And so, because his performance was inconsistent and erratic in wins and in losses, there's no way for us to predict whether or not his effort is or uh, his effort on a court is tied to the team's margin of victory, right? So we can't do that anymore. We can also speculate maybe the team now has more firepower or more productive players that are on a team, right? If there's more productive players on a team, that impacts the team's margin of victory. That kind of takes away. That could diminish the correlation that the impact that he has on the team's margin of victory. And so that's kind of like what the two options are, right? However, it dropped off. My belief is his performance was just inconsistent and bad. It was so bad that it could not. That's what I feel. His performance, because his efficiency was so low and the defense just wasn't there, it just did not have an impact. It just had a negative impact on the team's margin of victory, right? And so it couldn't have a positive impact. And so he just pretty much played bad the whole year. Like I said, I even was quoting stats where I was talking about, I think at one point out of 68, 69 games he played, I'm sorry, maybe it was 60 games that he played, and he shot 44%, only like maybe 44% or better, like only maybe 20, 22 times. That's really bad. And so that's just why I just don't understand what the coach is thinking about, where his head is at with this. And if he has this gross misunderstanding of what Julius Randle can offer to the team, I'm not sure if I can be confident he knows exactly what the team needs in the future to be a very efficient, especially on the offensive end. He clearly seems like he doesn't know what the team needs. I don't think it doesn't seem like he has the head for offense. I don't know if he really understands it, and I think that's why he's just looking at Julius's points, rebounds, and he's looking at the assists, and then he looks at the P.I.E. That Julius has, and then he's like, okay, you know what, this is the guy I'm going to go with. Like, although Julius Randle this year in a lot of these games, his P.I.E. tends to be is lower, is lower than it should be, right? He should be top. It should be like at least around the same ranges as like RJ. And but I think on average he has one of the highest PIE on the team, and so I think that's why the coach goes with it. But like I said, the efficiency is not there, and you have to compare his efficiency versus the efficiency of the people he's matched up against. And I don't think the coach is doing that. And if he is and he still comes out to the same results, then he's crazy. It just doesn't make any sense. Then it clearly shows he doesn't understand. I don't think he truly understands like what it takes to have a winning offense, a good offense. And it's crazy to say. I'm not even a coach, and but it's just the numbers just doesn't make any sense, and it just doesn't make any sense why he leans on Julius the way he does. It makes sense last year. It doesn't make sense this year, right? He should have moved on, and maybe it's the loyalty part where he just want to stay tethered to Julius to show, it's good. Showing loyalty is good, but at the expense of the team and the expense of a winning season. It's clear that if he would have played Obi, McBride early in the season, and Grimes, they would have won more games, and they probably would be in the playoffs. But he didn't do that, and so just his poor judgment and the stubbornness and the lack of leadership, I just don't see him. He doesn't deserve to be back. All right, going back to this game though, we're just going to talk about some good things and also talk about the stats going forward only. Evan Fournier shot 62.5% from the field. He had a big game. He dropped like 30 points, I think. Yep, he dropped 30 points today and 10 and 16 from the field. I mean, he had an excellent game. R.J. Barrett, 9 of 17, 50, almost 53%. I think he had 25 points. Yep. And so that was pretty good. Let's just kind of remove some of this here, some of the stuff that I don't think we really need to look at, and we'll go from there. They Emmanuel Quickly 6 of 12, good game. Emmanuel Quickly has been shooting really well from the field recently. 16 points, had a good game today. I'm becoming impressed, but the issue with this game for us overall was defense, like I said. But he had a good offensive game quickly. Julius wasn't too terrible today on the offensive end in terms of efficiency. He was 43.8%, almost 44%. So it was good. It was good to see that, right? He looked a little more comfortable in the garden today. So I'm not sure who he talked to, what they said to him, but whatever it was, at least on the offensive end, it was good to see him to show some confidence, a little bit more confidence today on the offensive end. Sometimes I wonder if it's just like he's given up and he just doesn't care. He doesn't even try. I wonder if he's just playing bad on purpose when he's in the garden. But that's just speculation. You know, Alec Burks for 15 on the offense. He turned into a pumpkin today. But he's been having some good games lately. Scored 12 points. Mitchell Robinson 2 of 4. It was really tough for him to get going, but he did have 10 rebounds. He was really trying hard out there today, but it felt like it was just him out there. Honestly, it felt like the only person that was really trying out there was him. Obi Toppin, when he did play, he played hard. Quickly was playing hard too. R.J. Barrett was trying a little bit, but I don't know. On the defensive end, there was a lot of defensive. Possessions where I just kind of felt like he just wasn't giving good enough effort. And McBride struggled on the defensive end today too. And so the reason why Evan Fournier is on top here because he actually had the highest impact, on the team, right? And the reason why that is like he scored 30 points. His opponent scored 25 points, so he won his matchup by 5 points. But he also was more efficient than his matchup was. So he was almost 7% more efficient than his matchup, right? So that was good. Second place was RJ. RJ Barrett scored 25 points. Opponent scored 22 points on him. He won his matchup by 3 points, but he was also 3% more efficient than his matchup, which is also good, right? And so those are kind of like the two big ones. And of course, Emmanuel Quickly, he kind of struggled on the defensive end today. Allowed 57% shooting. His opponent scored 9 points, but he scored... I think he scored like 16 points, so he outscored his opponent by. He outscored his opponent by 7 points, and so Emmanuel Quickly, he won his matchup, but he just wasn't efficient enough. And in terms of impact, that was pretty much it. Alec Burks, he did not lose his matchup, but he was almost 20% less efficient. So because of that tips him into a negative. So he did lose the matchup. Because it was even, but then he was less efficient, so he lost the matchup as a result of being way less efficient. Mitchell Robinson kind of basically even, and he was more efficient than his matchup. Obi Toppin, -2, lost his matchup by 2 points. He didn't get a lot of minutes. That's the reason why. But he was almost 17% more efficient than his matchup. And of course, Jericho Sims and McBride really struggled this game. Jericho Sims is really starting to look like he did early in the season, and so. So it is what it is. Hopefully they can figure that out with Jericho Sims. And then I have the P.I.E. with the defensive factor. And when I do that, obviously, Evan was on top with the P.I.E. But even with the defensive factor, he was still on top. RJ was in second place. Emmanuel Quickly third place. Julius was fourth at 14%. Alec Burks is 13%. He was fifth, and Mitch Robinson was sixth at 12%. Obi was sixth, or is that maybe sixth or seventh? Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Obi was seventh place with 2%, but like I said, he didn't get a ton of minutes, and so that's the reason why he was so low this game. So that's pretty much it with the stats. I wanted to talk a little more now about the I really want to talk more about the front office and the rationale, what they're doing. Like I said, I get it. You want to reclaim and make sure you build up Julius Randle's image if you're gonna have a chance of trading him, and not like have to send out a bunch of assets just to trade Julius Randle. It makes a lot of sense, right? And Julius Randle's a twin, but walking 2010. However, because of his attitude, what he did this year, it's really just that it just made that contract look pretty bad, right? And makes it it makes it much more difficult to move because of his behavior. Like I said, you look at last year, anyone would have chosen Julius Randle over Sabonis last year. But this year, the Kings chose Sabonis over Julius Randle in that trade, and I think the reason why was because of his poor performance, and also not just the poor performance, but his behavior. Because, like I said before, Nye came out basically a few weeks ago that he came in out of shape. These NBA teams, they know that. Their front offices know that. They know what's going on. They kind of like, it's a very small community. And so they talk to each other. So there's, and so honestly, I think, he just kind of messed that up. A lot of people, he said some very heartwarming things about his, it really sucks, right? Because he has a kid who comes to the games, and it is devastating, to watch your kids to sit there and then like hear people boo his dad, right? And it's really tough. And you know what's crazy? I remember, when I was a lot of times you see the kid at the games, and it's tough. Even when there's good games, he shows a lot of love to his kids, and he looks like I'm sure he's a good father. Shows a lot of love to his kids, but sometimes it's like when you see a public figure and they have their kids in public, and it's great that you're proud of your kids and you show off your kids, but sometimes it's like you kind of, because the problem with that is like there's a lot of messed up people out here, and you kind of, it's almost like you're putting your family out there uh, for kind of like, I don't know, it's just like I'm not even sure for what. Like it's not you. Not saying he's purposely putting them out there for bad. I mean, he doesn't. He's just trying to like show and share the love he has for his kid and his family, and that's a really good thing. But there's a lot of messed up people around here. There's a lot of messed up people in this world, and then there's a lot of people behind these keyboards say really messed up things about people's families, and so it's really tough. I remember even it was kind of tough to see it, even when things were going great, um, because it's just because there's going to be people out there that are just going to do the wrong thing, and they're going to always say the wrong thing. They're going to be really messed up. Even like doing the stuff I do online right now, when I'm in certain chat boards, they're just people that they're just there. It's almost like they just get off and trying to, I'm not really that active online, but only recently I started being more active online. And they're just like, they're people, their whole thing is just to be mean. They just want to be mean and be a jerk to you, and they don't care. And it's crazy. Some of them I've noticed, there's a couple of people I've noticed, like, there's on a certain social media site that I'm sometimes, I share a lot of stuff on. And it's like sometimes they follow, like they follow everything I post, and they'll have something either hateful or messed up to say about it, just because I think because I engaged them in the dialogue, and then obviously they didn't like what I had to say, and then now they want to follow you and make sure they make you miserable every time, and it doesn't work. It does. For me, I don't care. I just ignore it. At a certain point, if I realize that's what you're trying to do, then it's like, yeah, I know you're trying to make me feel miserable, so I just ignore it. And so that's why even, but it's really sad. It's really sad when it's to see him and his family go through that. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I felt like he was going to tap out. Um, it wasn't, it was a little bit his family, but it was more for him. Because it was like the crowd, there's no one that can withstand that kind of pressure here in the city, especially given the way he was behaving and the way he was playing. It wasn't going to fly. The fans are not just going to let him half step, and then say slick stuff and then curse them out. They're not going to let you do that. You're not going to stay, you're not going to last here. Especially, and then the crazy thing, he continues to play the way he does. But getting back to the front office, and and what their role is in this. Obviously they gave him the extension, and honestly, I believed in the year he had last year. I did a video where I compared his numbers to Joker last year, and the only reason I compared his numbers to Joker was really because of the correlation. That correlation statistic measuring like the both players. I measured both players' net rating to their team's margin of victory, and both of them had high correlation. So there's a good relationship between their net rating and their team's margin of victory. And so it showed like the team was overly dependent on these two players. And because of that, you can use that to make a case for MVP, right? Obviously, Randall can never be on the same stage as MVP with Joker because even last year, Joker was way more efficient than Randall was. And the funny thing I was saying during that, I was saying that like he shot 45% last year, and I was saying in order for him to make that step to be seriously considered as MVP, he needs to move up towards like that 50% range because he's a big man. Honestly, at the end of the day, he's a big man, a power forward, and he's shooting like this year he's shooting 41, almost 42%. Last year he shot 45%. For he needs to be more efficient for him to be evenly, for him to be considered, right? And then also try to get maybe reduce his turnovers, but just one, right? Again, keep it at two, maybe an average of two. And so those are the things I talked about. And I even talked about how he can do it, like by eliminating the long twos that he was doing, and because he was such a load in the blocks. I was thinking maybe he should like hit the basket a little more because last year it was very difficult for them, for people to stop him. But now I'm realizing it was because of obviously he had his jump shot working last year, and so everything worked out really well for him, even going to the hole. And so, but however, they signed him. I didn't even bother thinking like he was outperforming the way he did because it was contract year. I didn't even think about that actually, and it's kind of silly. Should have, I mean, given how many years I've been watching basketball, if I would have thought about that, I would be like, you know what, maybe we should trade him because like he might be doing this for a contract, right? And but didn't even cross my mind because I was so bought into his performance last year, and I think everyone was bought in because we've been dying for something like that, right? And so, I can understand why it would look crazy when you finally have it to then trade it, right? For what, right? And what could you really get back in return? But now this year, looking at it, yeah, you probably should have. We probably should have traded it for, like a good player and a first round pick, especially a high first round pick. And so, in hindsight, that's what they should have done. And so that was one mistake that they made. But I think that was that's not that was just a mistake that no one could have foreseen. Well, I shouldn't say no one could have foreseen it. There was actually some fans that was against resigning him. But so that was one. But for me, the most egregious one was like Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier. I kind of gave that move a chance. I was scared about their defense, but I gave it a chance because I was like, okay, these people, they do this for a living. They know what they're doing. They have this analytics team, so they must know, have a good reason. They must know why they brought him in. But then you kind of deep dive into the numbers for both of these guys, and then you're like, you know what? I think that was a pretty bad idea when you kind of look at the numbers. I did a video where I kind of looked at the numbers for Kemba and Evan Fournier last year, and it was like you looked at your numbers, especially on the defensive end. It's like, why would you even like bring both of them on this team and then have them in your starting lineup? There's no way to cover that, right? Um, and so that was the other mistake the front office made. I'm not gonna kill them for like the Nerlens Noel. In my opinion, the one I was a little disappointed with. Actually, I was probably one of the few people I would have preferred to keep Bullock and trade and let Brooks go. And it's probably crazy, but I kind of felt like I've always felt like you can depend a little more. You kind of know what you're gonna get from Bullock. You're gonna get very good defense, versatility, especially on the defensive end. That was the biggest thing. I felt like I didn't know if we were gonna make it with Bullock on, but they let him go, and so they made some mistakes, right? And so, but the thing is now this team next year is gonna be the front office. Next year is gonna be their third year, right? And so they have decisions to make this offseason. There's so many things that should have happened. They should have so much more information on Cam Reddish. They need more information on Obi Toppin. Because the problem is, the reason why he's going to be tough for this front office next year is because if they bring Randle back next year, and given the effort he's been given now, I don't know if he's gonna come back a new man next year and play harder. I don't see it happening. So Randall's gonna be back next year. He's not gonna be playing defense, right? And he's gonna be shooting like 42% from the field and turning over the ball 3 times a game. That's probably what's gonna happen. Yeah, everyone there's Randall supporters where they're crying because he's putting up 20, 10, and 5, and it's not the same as Giannis and Joker. Julius is shooting 41%. The Joker's shooting 57%. That's like a 16% difference in efficiency. It's like the Joker is miles ahead, way more efficient, has a higher assist to turnover ratio. So it's not in the same breath. Last year, you can kind of try to compare, but you couldn't even still put them on the same stage because Joker was still way more efficient last year, but now it's even worse. And then now he's even a worse defender than the Joker is. So it's like, why even like, it's crazy. And so the people that support Julius Randle because he's putting up 20, 10, and 5, fine. Start a basketball league and, go sign him and have him be your franchise player if you like him so much. But so if they bring him back next year, and then they also bring Tibbs back next year, wow, I think there's a good chance they're gonna have a bad season next year. And if this team has a bad season next year, a lot of people are saying like, oh, like I know what they're thinking, right? Because people are saying it's like, okay, if it doesn't work out, then they can get rid of Thibodeau like towards the end of next year, and then maybe have like an interim coach, right? And then they get to pick another coach for their 4th year. It's like, oh, Dolan, we're going to turn it around. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Nope, that's not going to work. The reason why is going to if you have a bad year next year, so it's going to be 2 bad years, and it's going into your 3rd year. So that means you're going in the wrong direction. You have 2 bad years in a row out of 3 years. So you're going in the wrong direction, clearly. And so how is Dolan supposed to believe that you're going to go in the correct direction? You're going to all of a sudden turn around the 4th year when you pick whoever, miraculously you're going to pick the right coach. That's going to be one problem. The other problem is, I've said this a few times before, although a lot like Obi Toppin and some of these guys, although their contract doesn't expire next year necessarily, it's not like, they need to get they need to be resigned next year by hella high water. However, Obi Toppin is going to be the end of his 2nd year, going into his 3rd year. Next year is going to be his 3rd year. If Julius Randle's here and coach is here, and it looks like the team is going to keep Tibbs, I don't know what makes anyone think Obi Toppin is going to stay if that's what's going to happen. So the problem is they're going to have like too many young guys that like they're probably going to end up walking. They're not going to stay, especially if Mitchell Robinson leaves, right? It's going to be bad. So that's where I'm coming from with it. Mitchell Robinson possibly leaves. Obi Toppin, then you're telling me Obi Toppin possibly is going to request a trade and going to want to leave because Randle and the coach is here. Cam is probably going to want to leave because the coach is not going to play him, right? Because if he has his way, they're going to bring back everyone, including Burks and Fournier, and maybe they'll get the coach is going to ask for a defensive wing in the offseason. That's what the coach is going to ask for. He's going to ask for a defensive veteran wing to bring in, and then he's going to bury all the young guys behind him. So that's what they're going to do. So they're just going to keep setting themselves back. The coach is going to keep just setting the team back and the development of these young guys back until the guys are going to slowly start to walk, right? So you're going to have these guys that you're drafting that constantly leave. So before it was like you weren't developing them and then they leave because they didn't have any value. But now you pick some good ones and they're developing, but they're leaving because they don't want to stay with the team. Because, the team, because the coach is, they don't like the coach or and they don't like the direction of the organization. And that's what's going to start happening. And it's going to be evidently clear. If they bring back Randle and Tibbs next year, I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen. They're going to start losing some players. Definitely Cam. You might hear like Obi Toppin request like his team maybe. They're pretty professional, so you won't hear about it. But I think they're gonna probably look to leave as well. To start figuring out where they're gonna go next after his rookie contract is up. And like Dolan's gonna get a whiff of that middle of next year, and towards the end of next year, he's gonna get a really good whiff of that, and so he's gonna be like, everything is falling apart. That's what he's going to be thinking. The team is losing. You're losing all these good young guys that you drafted that you're supposed to be able to keep, but they're leaving because they don't want to stay with the team, and which is New York City too, which is insane. And then he's going to be like, "What are you guys doing?" He's going to clean house. This front office, if they think because um, Thibodeau, they keep Thibodeau for 3 years, that Dolan's going to let them pick another coach next year. I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen. Look, I don't know Dolan. He may do that, but it's going to be year four. It's going to be. I think they're discounting the fact that they're going to be asking for year four after two straight bad years, right? It's not Dolan. It's not how Dolan's going to see it. He's going to be like, well, so you knew Thibodeau was bad, but because you wanted consistency, you kept him longer. So what? So you can pick someone else like next year. So how do I know you're picking the right guy now, right? And why didn't you make changes when you knew it wasn't going to work out? And it's going to be clear. It's going to be very clear that what they're doing it only for longevity, right? So they can get an extra crack at it, an extra year to get another crack at it. But it's not going to work, because it's like I said, it's unfortunately they're going to be asking for a year four, after having two bad years, and that's if they have next year's a bad year. And I just have a pretty good feeling it's going to be a bad year for them next year. If they bring back Julius and they bring back Thibodeau, it's going to be a bad year because what's going to happen is he's gonna want to at least run a lot of the offense through him, and the coach is gonna want to keep playing him. The guy is not playing defense. I don't know why the coach is playing a guy who's not playing defense, and he says he's a defensive coach. I'm not. If the management team is saying you got to play him because we need to reclaim his image, fine. But you don't need to play him 35 minutes. You can play him like 27 minutes, and give Obi Toppin more run. And so get yourself ready for what else is coming because they got to, they're gonna have to trade him. So you got to get yourself ready. But it's almost like he refuses to do it. He's sticking his head into like a stinky bag, a stinky burlap bag, and doesn't want to see or hear anything anyone is telling him. It's like it's not gonna work. I mean, like stick your head in the sand or in that burlap bag all you want, but if you don't get it together, you're going to be gone, And I think this might be his last rodeo. He's never going to get another shot after this. He's definitely not getting another shot because now he's done this on the biggest stage there is, right? So now everyone knows that he doesn't, he's just not very good on the offensive end. Now everyone knows he's probably just a defensive coordinator, maybe, right? And even that said, I mean, like even being an assistant coach, aren't you supposed to be good with players? Have good relationship with players. I mean, given his track record, the way he's treated players, and his ability to inspire confidence, I don't know. I don't know if he's gonna be able to get a job as an assistant coach. He probably won't even want a job as an assistant coach. But that's why I'm just saying it's bad all around for Thibodeau right now, and his team, and hopefully they can figure it out. But that's pretty much what I have. This is a very long rant. This is the longest video I've made to date. It's almost an hour. And so you guys like, subscribe. Let me know what you think about this long-winded rant and kind of like going through some of the stats. Comment below as well, and I'll be more than happy to respond. Have a good day.